Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 Early Edition.
We do not have any idea about the whereabouts of this violent offender. What we need more than ever is for anyone who saw something, heard something, and knows something to please call us right away.
Well, calls for help from Baltimore's police commissioner as a manhunt continues this hour for the person who shot an officer in Federal Hill last night. The officer was taken to shock trauma with what are believed to be non-life-threatening injuries. We have live coverage on that story in just a minute.
Good morning to all of you. Welcome back. 5:30 is the time. I'm Patrice Sanders.
And I'm Tom Rogers. And yes, it's one of those weekends where we were like, hey, let's go south and to a beach, right? And it was colder and wetter, so we should have stayed here.
Aw. Yeah. Well, you're going to have some nice weather part of this weekend. So let's see. Let's check in with traffic and weather. Jonathan Myers looking at the forecast.
There is a suspect on the loose who is armed and dangerous, who has fired and shot a police officer.
Well, breaking news. Manhunt continues this morning. Police searching for the suspect who shot an officer in Federal Hill. And Baltimore police say it started because the officer says the suspect may have been driving under the influence. Rachel Aragon live at Shock Trauma this morning with more on what led up to the shooting and the latest on the search for the suspect. Rachel.
Mayor Jack Young is issuing a statement reading in part, the level of violence on our streets is completely unacceptable and won't be tolerated. Our public safety officials, and in particular our police officers, deserve our gratitude and thanks for placing themselves in harm's way each and every day. This isn't the first time an officer has been a victim of violence in the city. Last August, an officer was shot in the leg after chasing a suspect on East Fairmount Avenue and North Caroline Street. And that same month, Baltimore Police Sergeant Isaac Carrington was shot and seriously injured during an attempted robbery outside of his home. In July, Sergeant Bill Shiflett was shot in the stomach while responding to a call of an armed person at a North Baltimore methadone clinic where 2 people were killed. Shiflett was released from the hospital a week later. And on July 19th, Deputy Commissioner Daniel Murphy and his wife were robbed at gunpoint in the Patterson Park area. And you'll remember a week later, a 59-year-old police lab technician with the department was violently attacked in broad daylight in East Baltimore. Police say the teen suspects also stole that employee's car. Stay with us. We will have continuing coverage on the manhunt going on right now on air and online.
In the meantime, an update on Baltimore's aerial surveillance plane. Commissioner Michael Harrison has remained cautiously optimistic about the program and its benefits as violence continues in the city. He says the plane has been providing the department with useful data.
Detectives are excited about the evidence package they have been receiving, and there are a number of violence cases, murders, shootings, and armed robberies where detectives have requested information from the Aerial Investigation Research Pilot Program. That information has been provided to them, and they're using that to help in their investigation.
According to Commissioner Harrison, independent researchers are tracking the data to determine the plane's success and see if the program is being utilized correctly.
5:35 now on the path forward. This morning, Baltimore is easing up on some restrictions to the stay-at-home order. Elijah Westbrook is live in Fells Point with what to expect when the new rules take effect. And we're talking about just hours from now, Elijah.
Thank you, Elijah. Baltimore County leaders are looking ahead to the stage 2 of the governor's Reopen Maryland plan. Yesterday, officials releasing guidelines for how restaurants could safely reopen for their outdoor dining. That's not yet allowed, though, in stage 1. Currently, there are more than 47,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 across the state of Maryland, 2,200 deaths. The number of hospitalizations slightly up, but it has been trending downward. Right now, there are 1,300 COVID patients. 3,300 have been released. More than 206,000 Marylanders have tested negative.
Some in Baltimore are pushing to close the digital divide. Why they're calling on Comcast to provide.
Warm and sunny again today, but our next weather maker, it's headed our way. Meteorologist Jonathan Myers is tracking when storms will be moving in. 5:38, your time.
Welcome back. Time now about 5:40.
Well, on the path forward, a group of Baltimore students and members of the Baltimore City Council are calling on Comcast to take some new action to close the digital divide for students in the city. They are asking Comcast to increase speeds, offer free access to students in need until 2 months after schools reopen, and finally open up all of its existing hotspots.
In Baltimore and across the country, schools risk unprecedented dropout rates and gaps in students' education if obstacles to distance learning aren't solved.
Right now in Baltimore, more than 40% of residents do not have access to broadband internet. Meanwhile, Harford County has expanded Wi-Fi at 5 county buildings so residents can get free internet access right from their parking lots. Passwords are not required. Wi-Fi is also available in the parking lots of Harford County Public Library branches. We have these locations right on our website, foxbaltimore.com. More fallout for a woman who called police on a man in Central Park, why she's now looking for a job. Plus, tensions continue to escalate between the U.S. and China over COVID-19, why China says the U.S. is pushing the two countries into a new Cold War. 542.
544, continuing our coverage on the path forward. Across the U.S., there are 1.6 million reported coronavirus cases, nearly 99,000 deaths, and 385,000 recoveries. Around the world, reported cases are now up to almost 5.6 million, with 350,000 deaths and 2.2 million recoveries. Now, as some countries call for an investigation into China for its initial response to the coronavirus, the Chinese Communist Party isn't backing down. Leaders there are now accusing the United States of bringing the two countries to the brink of a new Cold War. As Sinclair National correspondent Christine Frizzell reports, the complicated relationship could become a dangerous one to the world. 5:47 now is the time, and we've got traffic and weather together every 10 minutes. Let's go over to Jonathan Myers and see what we can expect. Thank you, Mark. Breaking news this morning, police still searching for the suspect who shot an officer in South Baltimore. We're live at Shock Trauma with how the officer is doing this morning and the very latest in the manhunt. Plus, protests erupt following the death of an African-American man in police custody. Find out what happened to the officers involved. And one of the latest murder victims in Baltimore is gunned down outside of his mother's home. Why his family believes the killing was in retaliation. 5:51, you're watching Fox 45 Early Edition.
.54 on this Wednesday morning. Protests erupt in Minnesota and Chicago following the death of an African-American man after Minneapolis police took him into custody Monday. Demonstrators reacting to disturbing video showing a white officer kneeling on the man's neck moments before he went into medical distress. Minneapolis police chief have fired the 4 officers who were involved in that incident. The FBI is now investigating. Here is some of the video. And again, we want to warn you, you may find this disturbing.
What do you want? I can breathe. Please, the knee in my neck.
The video shows the officer with his knee over the back of the man's neck while George Floyd tells him he can't breathe. Floyd was being arrested for an alleged forgery. Officers claim he resisted arrest. A New York woman has lost her job after calling police during an argument with an African-American man in Central Park Monday. Amy Cooper apologized, saying that she was wrong to call police, but says at the time she was afraid when Christian Cooper, who is at no relation to her, asked her to put a leash on her dog. Christian says that he was there bird watching, and he goes there specifically because he knows dogs aren't allowed off leash.
I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble. I don't know.
Well, police say when they ended up getting to the park, Amy and Christian were gone. No one's been arrested. Since the video surfaced, though, Amy has been fired from her employer, investment firm Franklin Templeton, and she has surrendered that dog to the shelter from where she adopted it.
Breaking news this morning, a manhunt underway in South Baltimore after a suspect shoots an officer in Federal Hill last night. The officer was taken to shock trauma where we're told their bulletproof vests may have saved the officer's life. That officer-involved shooting is just the latest example of violence after a string of violent and deadly shootings rocked Baltimore over the Memorial Day weekend. A total of 10 people were killed. The victims include 60-year-old Stephen Clark Sr. He was gunned down Friday in front of his home in Northwest Baltimore, where he took care of his mother. Family members believe someone killed Clark out of retaliation to get back at his oldest son.
Somebody shot him in his head, pulled up on him right there in the street, right in front of my mother's house, and shot him twice in his head.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison says Clark's murder is an open investigation. He's calling for those who know something or have seen something to come forward.
Well, the latest killings put this year ahead of last year. We've seen 120 homicides so far this year. It's one more than the same time last year. Between the violence and the pandemic, Baltimore remains a city in crisis.
And I'm live from shock trauma this morning, where a Baltimore police officer is now recovering after being shot last night in Federal Hill. Coming up, what we know so far about the suspect.
And Baltimore City is slowly taking steps to reopen after health officials say COVID-19 cases are trending downward. We'll tell you what this could mean for gyms, even restaurants.
And dealing with some increasing fog this morning and then some storms on the way. I'll let you know when those could get here in my Weather Authority forecast.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 Morning News.
Good morning on this Wednesday, May 27th. I'm Patrice Sanders.
And I'm Tom Rogers, and we have your traffic and weather together every 10 minutes.
Jonathan Myers looking at the forecast for us. Jonathan?
This is the Wild Wild West.
We actually have to do things, and that's hold the people who are doing this type of stuff accountable.
We have to let people know that this is not going to be tolerated in Baltimore.
Breaking news this morning, the candidates for mayor push for justice as police search for the suspect who shot an officer last night in Federal Hill. This morning, the officer is recovering at shock trauma, but Baltimore police warn residents that armed suspect is still on the loose. Rachel Aragon is live from shock trauma with what we know about the suspect and the officer who tried to pull him over last night. Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. The candidates for mayor are sounding off on the officer shot in the middle of a residential area in Federal Hill. City Council President and mayoral candidate Brandon Scott says the city has to send a message to all violent offenders.
We have to make sure that we hunt this person down. We have to hunt down every person that did violence over the weekend, Memorial Day, and everyone else. We have to let people know that this is not going to be tolerated in Baltimore.
Mayoral candidate Dhruv Vignarajah says he was at his campaign headquarters last night in downtown Baltimore when he saw police cars just go flying by.
I don't know what's happening to our city, but it's been going on for too long. 8 murders, 4 shootings this past Memorial Day weekend, to be followed up by a active shooter scenario. We've got a manhunt, a carjacked vehicle, most importantly, most significantly, an officer down.
Now, mayoral candidate T.J. Smith, who was a former Baltimore Police Department spokesperson, says he thinks the suspect has a criminal past.
Guarantee you, once the officers locate who this individual is, we're going to see that they've been involved in criminal activity for a long time, and we have to hold them accountable.
We reached out to all the top mayoral candidates. So far, we haven't heard back from Mary Miller. We do expect to hear from Sheila Dixon sometime this morning. Stay with us. We will have continuing coverage on the manhunt all morning long on air and online. 6:05 now. The path to reopen Baltimore takes some small steps forward this morning. Elijah Westbrook live in Fells Point, where some business owners are preparing to start opening their doors just hours from now, Elijah. This brings us to our question of the day. Is Maryland reopening too slowly, at the right speed, or not fast enough? So far, 60% say not fast enough, 40% say at the right speed, and there's no one who's saying that it's opening too slowly. You can weigh in on our website, foxbaltimore.com/vote. Currently, there are more than 47,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 across Maryland, 2,200 deaths. The number of hospitalizations is slightly up, but that's been trending down. Right now, 1,300 people are in the hospital. 3,300 have been released, and more than 206,000 Marylanders have tested negative.
Well, coming up, see how the Maryland National Guard is giving a helping hand to those in need.
And we've got fog this morning that we're contending with on the eastern shore. It's bleeding west, and you see it here on our Toyota AC Inner Harbor Skycam. I'm going to let you know how long it's going to last, when it's going to leave, and when some storms could be in your forecast. That's coming up in my Weather Authority forecast next. Time now 6:07. You're watching Fox 45 Morning News, all local, all morning. Time right now about 6:10, starting with some patchy dense fog this morning. You see the low clouds associated with that through 9 a.m. on the future scan. Maybe a break of sun by about 10:30 to noon, but that'll be taken the place of by a couple of spot sprinkles this afternoon. Look at all that heavy rain down to the south. Actually, some tropical moisture getting involved. I'll let you know if that's going to impact us any. Coming up in my Weather Authority forecast in just about 10 minutes.
Well, new this morning on the path forward, a new AP NORC poll reveals only about half of Americans would get a COVID-19 vaccine if they could. That's a low number considering the global race for a vaccine. 31% said they were not sure if they'd get vaccinated. 20% responding that they would refuse a vaccination. Among the Americans who say they would not get vaccinated, 7 out of 10 worry about safety and side effects stemming from the fast-track vaccine. A dozen Baltimore families in need now have 2 weeks' worth of food, water, and hygiene supplies. Maryland National Guard teamed up with the Holistic Life Foundation to make that all possible. A local nonprofit works with youth in underserved communities, teaching yoga and mindfulness practices.
Hopefully it's a little to help out the families who are feeling the impact of the situation right now.
I just want the families to have what they need. A lot of people out there don't have the things that they need during these times, so the opportunity that Ben gave us to connect the supplies with the families in need was amazing.
The Holistic Life Foundation plans to keep helping families through the pandemic and beyond. Baltimore City is starting its path forward. The business is allowed to start opening its doors this morning. Many Americans struggling to make ends meet during this pandemic. Next, some tips on how you can have your money last a little bit longer during these difficult times.
6:14 now. Some 90% of Americans are receiving or already received a stimulus check from the government. But for many, it won't be enough to get them through this crisis, and they'll still have to prioritize which bills get paid and which don't. Consumer Reports has some advice on how to make the money last a little longer. Consumer Reports says the most important thing to do if you're concerned about missing a payment to any creditor is to reach out with questions before you can't pay that bill. That will give you some time to consider all of your options. It is 6:17. We've got traffic and weather together every 10 minutes. Jonathan Meyer starting us off. We continue to follow breaking news on the manhunt underway after an officer was shot in Federal Hill. The latest on that officer's condition and what led up to the shooting.
And in times of need, Marylanders are making a difference. How one organization is reaching out to make sure that you have the essentials you need. You're watching Fox 45 Morning News, all local, all morning. 6:23, good morning, everyone. Every day this week, we have been introducing you to people, businesses who are making a difference, who are really working hard to keep our communities on the path forward in this pandemic. Marylanders who are making a difference, and we are continuing the segment here today. We want to introduce you to Heather Chapman with the United Way of Central Maryland. Now, if you are in need of a little help, you can contact the United Way of Central Maryland. And as she said right there, the only way this works is neighbors, helping each other get through this.